They said he owned Los Angeles, not with titles or politics, not with law or order, but with silence. The kind of silence that made people lower their voices when they said his name, Adrian Moretti. To the city, he was a myth wrapped in a tailored suit, a man people talked about only when they were sure no one else was listening. To the streets, he was the reason deals were made, lives were spared, and sometimes taken. He didn't need to show his face often. His presence was enough. When Adrian entered a room, conversation stopped. Eyes shifted. Time slowed. There was something about him, that quiet authority, that mix of danger and calm, that made even the strongest men forget how to breathe. Los Angeles was his kingdom. From the glowing hills of Hollywood to the dark alleys near the harbor, everything moved under his watch. Money, information, power, fear. He controlled them all, like invisible strings in a game only he understood. But power comes at a price. And Adrian paid it every single day. He didn't sleep much. Couldn't. The city had too many enemies, too many ghosts. Every deal he made left a scar. Every betrayal reminded him that loyalty never lasted long. Still, he ruled. Cold, precise, unshaken. The world called him ruthless, but those who truly knew him knew better. Adrian Moretti wasn't heartless. He was haunted. Haunted by choices that bought him control but stole his peace. They said he built an empire out of fear, but the truth was simpler. He built it out of pain. Every wall he raised, every rule he created, was protection. Because once, long ago, he'd cared too much. And in his world, caring was a weakness no man survived. He learned to move like a shadow, to speak like a whisper. He learned that loyalty could be rented but never owned. And he learned that power, no matter how strong, couldn't protect him from himself. At 32, Adrian Moretti had everything: wealth, control, and a name that carried more weight than any crown. He could make a phone call and change a man's life, or end it. He could walk into any room and own it with silence alone. But at night, when the city slept and his penthouse lights flickered against the skyline, he felt the truth pressing against his chest. For all the things he owned, there was nothing that truly belonged to him, not love, not peace, not even his own heart. The world saw a king, but inside, he was a prisoner of his own empire. And yet, fate has a cruel sense of humor. Because the moment a man convinces himself he doesn't need love, that's exactly when it finds him. For Adrian, it started on an ordinary night. The kind of night that carried no warnings, no omens, just the hum of city lights and the scent of rain on concrete. He was standing on the balcony of his high-rise office, cigarette smoke curling into the sky, watching the city he owned stretch endlessly beneath him. He thought about the things he'd lost, the people he'd buried, the promises he'd broken, and wondered if the silence he'd built was really peace. Or punishment. Somewhere far below, music drifted from a downtown club, soft, distant, like a heartbeat. He closed his eyes for a moment, listening, and maybe, just maybe, the world shifted that night, because soon, everything he'd built, every rule, every line he swore he'd never cross, would be tested by one woman he never saw coming. He didn't know her name yet. Didn't know what her voice sounded like, or how her presence would burn through his defenses like fire through glass. But when she entered his world, everything would change. They said Adrian Moretti owned Los Angeles. But the truth, the cruel, beautiful truth, was that he'd never truly owned anything, because the city might have feared his name. But one day soon his heart would learn to fear hers. It happened on a Friday night. The kind of night that made Los Angeles glow. Soft rain on pavement, neon lights reflecting off wet glass, the air heavy with perfume and secrets. Adrian Moretti didn't believe in chance. He believed in control, in precision, in the kind of planning that left no room for surprises. But fate never asks permission before it rewrites a man's life. He was attending a charity gala, the kind of event meant to wash blood money in champagne and good intentions. Men wore expensive suits, women wore smiles they didn't mean, and everyone played their part in the endless dance of greed and reputation. Adrian didn't care for the lights or the laughter. He didn't even remember what the charity was for. He was there because appearances mattered, even to monsters. And then he saw her, Amara Bennett. A journalist known for her sharp words and fearless questions. She wasn't like the others. She didn't wear diamonds or act impressed by the power in the room. Her confidence didn't come from who she knew. It came from knowing herself. She was standing near the edge of the ballroom, holding a glass of wine she hadn't touched, her eyes scanning the crowd, sharp, observant, calculating, and when her gaze met his, the world went quiet. For a moment, Adrian forgot to breathe. She didn't look away, didn't flinch, didn't smile. She just stared, steady, curious, like she was trying to figure him out. Most people avoided his eyes, but she looked straight through him, and something inside him shifted, something he didn't even know was still alive. He turned away first. That alone was enough to unsettle him, because Adrian Moretti didn't look away from anyone. People looked away from him. The rest of the night blurred into meaningless conversation. Men tried to impress him, women tried to charm him, and yet every sound faded into the background. His mind kept drifting back to that one woman in the corner with the quiet fire in her eyes. He didn't realize she was watching him too. Not with admiration, but curiosity. Because Amara Bennett wasn't there to mingle. She was there chasing a story. A story about a man who controlled Los Angeles from the shadows. She'd spent months tracing whispers and rumors, all leading back to one name. Adrian Moretti. And now, for the first time, she was seeing the man behind the myth. He was composed, calculated, almost too still, like a storm waiting to break. There was danger in him, yes, but also something deeply human beneath the surface, something she couldn't quite name. When the gala ended, Adrian left early. He always did. But as he stepped into the cool night air, he felt that same pair of eyes on him again. He glanced over his shoulder. And there she was, standing at the top of the stairs, rain catching in her hair, her gaze locked on his. It wasn't attraction. Not yet. It was recognition. Like two forces meeting that were never meant to collide, but couldn't help it. For a second, neither moved. And then she smiled. Not a polite smile, not a nervous one, but the kind that said, "I see you." He should have left. He should have walked away and forgotten her face like he forgot everyone else's. But he didn't. Something about that smile followed him all the way home. Through the drive down Sunset Boulevard, through the silence of his penthouse elevator, even as he poured himself a drink and stared at the city he supposedly owned. All he could think about were her eyes, and how for the first time in years, someone had looked at him without fear. That night, Adrian Moretti realized something he didn't want to admit. A man can rule a city, but he can't control what finds its way into his heart. And whether he knew it or not, his empire had just been shaken, not by bullets, not by enemies, but by a woman who hadn't even tried to destroy him. She simply existed, and that was enough to start his downfall. He didn't see her again for a week. But that didn't stop him from thinking about her. Adrian Moretti wasn't used to curiosity. In his world, curiosity was dangerous. It got people killed. And yet, every time he closed his eyes, he saw hers. Those eyes, dark, steady, unflinching, had burned through his armor like fire through silk. He didn't know what color they were exactly. Maybe brown, maybe amber. It didn't matter. All he remembered was the way they made him feel. Seen. No one looked at Adrian Moretti like that. Not his men, not his allies, not the women who threw themselves into his arms for the thrill of it. They all looked at him with fear or fascination. But she, Amara Bennett, looked at him like she wanted to understand him, and that terrified him, because understanding led to truth. And truth, in his world, was a weapon sharper than any knife. He spent years building walls, concrete, cold, impenetrable. Walls that kept him alive. Walls that protected what little humanity he had left. But Amara, without even trying, had found a crack. She'd done what no rival, no enemy, no betrayal ever could. She'd made him feel, and feelings. Feelings were dangerous. It started small. A thought that wouldn't go away. What did she think of him? What did she know? Was she afraid? Or worse, intrigued? He told himself it was simple curiosity, that she was a threat, and he needed to keep an eye on her. That's what he told himself when he sent one of his men to find out where she lived, who she worked for, what she was after. Information was power, and Adrian didn't like being unprepared, but the truth? The truth was that he wanted to see her again. Not as a target, not as a problem, as a reminder that somewhere beneath all that darkness, he was still human. Meanwhile, Amara was playing her own game. She'd been assigned to dig into the city's underbelly. Corruption, missing money, names that didn't exist on paper. And the deeper she dug, the more one name kept surfacing. Adrian Moretti. Her editor warned her to stay away. He's dangerous, Bennett. The kind of man who doesn't like to be seen. But danger didn't scare her. She'd built her career chasing it. Still, when she wrote his name on the top of her notepad, she felt something unusual. Hesitation. And she didn't know why. Maybe it was the way he looked at her that night. Not like prey, not like possession, but like a man trying to remember what it felt like to be alive. That look stayed with her. Through her morning coffee, through every article she tried to finish but couldn't, she hated that he was in her head. She hated that part of her wanted to see him again too. For both of them, it became an unspoken obsession. Him, pacing the marble floors of his penthouse, wondering why her eyes haunted him. Her, staring at his picture on her laptop, wondering if there was more to him than the monster the world whispered about. They were two people standing on opposite sides of a line drawn in blood and fear. And yet, both were inching closer to it. He was the king of a city built on shadows. She was the light that didn't know how to stop shining, and when light meets shadow, one of them always loses. Adrian didn't know it yet, but every thought, every heartbeat, every restless night was leading him toward a moment that would change everything, because the next time he saw her there wouldn't be a crowd, no distance, no disguise, just him and her. And those eyes, the same ones that had burned through his defenses once, ready to finish what they started. He didn't believe in destiny. But maybe destiny believed in him. And maybe, for the first time in his life, Adrian Moretti, the man who owned Los Angeles, wasn't the hunter anymore. He was the one being found. There's a saying in Los Angeles: the higher you climb, the closer you are to falling. Adrian Moretti had climbed higher than most, and now, for the first time, he could feel the air thinning. It started with a message. No name, no number. Just a single line on his encrypted phone. Someone's asking questions about you. He read it twice, expression unreadable. Then, quietly, he set the phone down on his desk. The ocean outside his penthouse windows was calm that morning, a perfect lie. Beneath that smooth blue surface, there was always something dangerous moving, just like him. He knew who the message was about. He didn't need to ask Amara Bennett, the journalist, the woman who didn't know when to stop. She was digging into things that were never meant to see daylight. Names, money trails, silent partnerships that had built empires and destroyed families. She was getting too close, and in his world, too close meant marked. Adrian leaned back in his chair, exhaling smoke from a cigarette he hadn't realized he lit. He'd warned people before, reporters, cops, even senators, but this felt different. Because this time he wasn't angry, he was worried. Worried for her. And that was new. His second-in-command, Marco, entered without knocking. "Boss, she's been seen near the docks. Asking about shipments?" Adrian didn't look up. "And? She's talking to people she shouldn't be talking to. You want me to handle it? Handle it." That was Marco's polite way of saying, make her disappear. Adrian stubbed out his cigarette, eyes fixed on the skyline. For a long moment he said nothing. Then quietly, "No, I'll handle it myself." Marco frowned. "You sure? If she's digging, she's either brave or stupid, maybe both," Adrian murmured. "Either way, I want to talk to her." That was the closest he'd come to admitting anything, even to himself. Later that night he found her. Not at a party, not hiding behind her camera or notepad, but alone, sitting on a park bench overlooking the city lights. It was late. Too late for anyone except trouble or truth. She didn't flinch when she saw him. Her pulse quickened. Sure. But her eyes, those same eyes, held steady. "You've been asking questions," he said, voice low, steady, dangerous. She tilted her chin up. "That's what I do." He took a step closer. And do you always dig this deep into men who could end you with one call? Amara's lips curved, almost like a smile. Only when they have something to hide. Adrian's jaw tightened. He admired her courage. He hated it too. You're walking on a wire, Bennett. One wrong move and you'll fall. I'm not afraid of falling. He leaned closer, his breath brushing her ear. You should be. The air between them thickened. Electric, heavy, alive. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then she whispered, If you didn't want me to find the truth, you wouldn't have come here yourself. And she was right. He could have sent men. He could have ended her story before it began, but he didn't, because somewhere in that dark heart of his, Adrian Moretti didn't want her gone. He wanted her safe. He just didn't know how to keep her that way without breaking the only rule that had ever kept him alive. Don't care. She stood, brushing past him, her perfume faint but impossible to forget. If you're trying to scare me, Adrian, it's not working. He turned, eyes burning. It's not a threat, Amara. It's a warning. She looked back once, her silhouette framed by the city lights. Then maybe you should start warning yourself. And just like that, she was gone. Leaving him standing there, a man built from power and fear, haunted by a woman who refused to bow to either. That night, Adrian didn't sleep. For the first time in years, his empire felt fragile, not because of enemies, but because of her, because she wasn't afraid of him, and that made her the most dangerous person in Los Angeles. That night didn't leave him. It followed Adrian Moretti like a shadow he couldn't shake. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, the curve of her jaw, the defiance in her stare. The way her voice didn't tremble even when she stood inches away from the most feared man in Los Angeles. He'd spent a lifetime mastering control. Control of his empire, his men, his anger, his desire. But Amara Bennett, she was the first thing he couldn't control, and that realization burned through him like whiskey in an open wound. He poured himself another glass. Expensive, aged, meaningless. It wasn't enough to drown her memory. Nothing was. Across the penthouse, the city glittered in the distance, beautiful, corrupt, and his. He'd built it from blood and silence, and yet somehow it all felt smaller now, like the empire he owned couldn't fill the emptiness she'd left in his mind. Boss. Marco's voice broke through his thoughts. He didn't knock. No one ever did. There's been movement near the docks. Cops asking around. You want us to take care of it? Adrian didn't answer right away. He stared into his glass, watching the amber light tremble like something alive. Not yet, he said finally. Let it play out. Marco hesitated. You sure? If Bennett's involved? Adrian's eyes flicked up, sharp as a blade. Leave her out of this. There it was again. The weakness he hated. The one he couldn't bury. The tone in his voice told Marco everything he needed to know. He didn't question it. He just nodded and left. When the door shut, Adrian exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. He didn't know why he'd protected her. Maybe because deep down, she reminded him of a life he'd never had. One where people told the truth, even when it cost them everything. He'd stopped believing in that kind of courage a long time ago, but she made him want to believe again. He walked out to the balcony. The night air hit him, cold and clear. From up here, Los Angeles looked almost peaceful. Lights stretched to the horizon like stars scattered across the ground. But he knew better. Every light hid a lie. Every shadow held a story. And tonight, both belonged to her. He thought about the way she'd said his name, not with fear, but with a strange kind of curiosity. Like she wanted to know the man behind the myth. Like she didn't believe the monster stories. No one had ever looked at him like that. And now, he couldn't stop wondering if she saw something in him he'd forgotten was there. Down below, a black car pulled up in front of the building. For a second, his heart reacted before his mind did. A flicker of hope. But it wasn't her. Just another ghost of his empire coming to collect another night. He turned away, jaw tight, eyes burning with something he didn't want to name. Sleep didn't come easy anymore. When it did, it came with her voice echoing in his dreams. He could hear her say it again. Then maybe you should start warning yourself. It wasn't just a line. It was prophecy, because the truth was he was warning himself. Every instinct screamed that she would ruin him, break the foundation of everything he'd built, expose the man beneath the monster. And still, part of him didn't care. Maybe that was the most dangerous part of all. He had power, money, control, all the things men spent their lives chasing. But none of it mattered anymore, not when a single woman had turned his world into something he couldn't predict. He used to believe love was a weakness, but now, lying in the dark with her memory burning through his mind, Adrian Moretti realized something even darker. Weakness doesn't destroy men like him. Obsession does, and she had already become his. Los Angeles looked different through her eyes. To most people, it was all palm trees and promise, a city built on dreams. But Amara Bennett had stopped believing in dreams a long time ago. She saw the cracks beneath the glamour, the blood beneath the neon, and lately, every road she followed led to one name: Adrian Moretti. She sat at her small apartment desk, surrounded by papers, maps, and files. Her laptop screen glowed against the dark, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. She'd been up for 20 hours, maybe more. Time didn't matter anymore. Only the truth did. Her fingers traced over a photo, grainy, black and white. Adrian standing beside a city councilman at a gala, both smiling, both lying. She knew what the picture meant, corruption that reached higher than she'd imagined. But she also knew what publishing it would cost her, because men like Adrian Moretti didn't just control the streets. They controlled silence. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated before answering. Bennett, she said, a pause. Then a voice, low, rough, familiar. Still chasing ghosts? Her stomach tightened. You shouldn't be calling me. I shouldn't have to, Adrian replied. You're getting too close to things you don't understand. She laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. I understand enough. No, he said, his tone like steel wrapped in velvet. You understand the story, not the war. Silence stretched. Through the phone, she could almost hear him breathing. Calm, controlled, dangerous. I warned you once, Amara, he said. I don't give second warnings. Then why are you calling? She asked quietly. He didn't answer, because he didn't know. He wasn't supposed to care whether she lived or died, and yet here he was, warning her again. She leaned back, crossing her arms. If you're trying to scare me off, I'm trying to keep you alive. Those words hit harder than she expected. There was something real in his voice. Something raw. Why? She whispered. Why do you care what happens to me? A long pause. Then his voice dropped, softer now. Because I've seen what happens to people who go looking for truth in a city built on lies. And before she could say another word, the line went dead. She stared at her phone, heartbeat pounding. For a second, she thought about deleting the files, walking away, pretending she never knew his name. But she couldn't, because beneath the danger, beneath the warning, there was something else, a mystery she couldn't stop chasing. Not just about his crimes, but about the man himself. Who was he really? And why did someone like Adrian Moretti, a man who could erase anyone with a whisper, sound almost human when he spoke to her? Later that night, she drove to the edge of the city, the industrial district, where truth and danger were twins. The streets were empty, washed in yellow light. She was supposed to meet a contact, someone who claimed to have information about the Moretti operation, but no one showed. Only the echo of her own footsteps and the uneasy feeling that she was being watched. She turned, scanning the shadows. And that's when she saw it. A car parked across the street, engine running, lights off. A chill ran through her. Then, a voice from behind, low, familiar. You shouldn't be here, she spun around. Adrian stood there, half in shadow, his expression unreadable. I told you to stop, he said. I don't take orders. She shot back. Then start taking warnings. Her heart raced, but she didn't back down. What are you hiding, Adrian? He stepped closer, eyes burning under the dim light. Things you're not ready to see. The tension between them felt alive, sharp, magnetic, impossible to ignore. He should have turned around and left. She should have walked away, but neither did. For a moment, it wasn't about secrets or threats. It was about two people who should have been enemies, and yet couldn't seem to stop orbiting each other. And somewhere deep inside, they both knew. This wasn't just a warning anymore. It was a beginning of something neither of them could control. Lies were easy for Adrian Moretti. He'd built his empire on them, smooth, practiced, flawless. To survive in Los Angeles, You had to lie better than everyone else. Lie to the cops. Lie to your enemies. Lie to yourself. But this time the lie wasn't for power. It was for her. Amara Bennett had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. The night she met him at the docks, something changed. For both of them. She stopped seeing him as just a story, and he stopped seeing her as just a threat. Now, she was caught between truth and danger, and he was the only one standing between her and both. It began with a file, a thick envelope that landed on Adrian's desk the next morning. Inside were photos, surveillance shots, and one printed report. Bennett is compromised. Someone wants her gone. He didn't need to ask who. He already knew. There were people in his circle who saw her digging as a problem, and problems didn't stay alive for long in his world. He read the report twice before locking it away. Then he made his first mistake, the one that would haunt him. He didn't tell her. He told himself it was protection, that she didn't need to know who was after her, that he could fix it before it reached her door. But the truth was simpler. He couldn't stand the thought of her looking at him with fear. That night she called him. She didn't ask how he got her number. By now, she knew he had ways. "Someone followed me," she said, her voice calm but strained. "A black SUV, no plates." Adrian closed his eyes. The lie formed before the truth could escape. "Probably nothing," he said. "Reporters make enemies all the time." "Not like this," she whispered. He wanted to tell her everything. The file, the threat, the people planning to silence her. But he didn't. Instead, he said, "Stay inside. I'll take care of it." She hesitated. "You sound like you know something." "I always know something," he replied. "That's how I stay alive." It was meant to sound cold, distant. But she heard what he didn't say. The worry hiding beneath the arrogance. Hours later, Adrian sat alone in his office, staring at the city that glowed beneath him. Los Angeles was beautiful from above, like sin wrapped in starlight. But he knew what it really was, a maze of greed, fear, and betrayal. And now she was tangled in it because of him. Marco walked in. "Boss, we found the guys tailing her." "Orders?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "Make sure they don't get near her again." Marco nodded. "Understood. You want her to know?" "No," Adrian said too fast. Then softer. "No, she doesn't need to know." Another lie. He told himself it was temporary, that once she was safe, he'd come clean. But lies once spoken don't just fade. They grow, they twist, they bind, and soon they become part of you. The next time Amara saw him, she didn't mention the SUV. She just looked at him, long, searching, like she could sense something he wasn't saying. He tried to hold her gaze. Failed. That was when she knew. "Whatever you're hiding," she said quietly. "It's not just about your business, is it?" He didn't answer, because the truth was standing right in front of him, and he was already too far gone to stop it. When she left, the silence in the room was heavier than gunfire. For the first time in years, Adrian Moretti, the man who owned Los Angeles, felt something close to guilt, not for what he'd done, but for what he hadn't said, because protecting her meant lying to her. And in his world, every lie came with a price. He just didn't know yet how much this one would cost. Protection always came with a price. Adrian Moretti had learned that lesson long ago, the hard way. Every deal, every favor, every promise he made had strings attached. And this time, the strings were wrapped around Amara Bennett. He told himself he was keeping her safe. That the lie, the silence, the distance meant it was all to protect her. But in truth, it wasn't protection anymore. It was possession, and that realization scared him more than any rival ever had. It had been 3 days since the night she called. 3 days of silence. 3 days where every hour felt heavier than the last. He'd told Marco to keep an eye on her, discreetly. No contact, no questions, just watch. But tonight, when Marco came into his office, Adrian could already tell something was wrong. "She's not home," Marco said. "Her car's gone. Her phone's off." Adrian's cigarette hit the ashtray. "Find her." Already trying. "You want to tell me what she's gotten into?" Adrian's eyes narrowed. "No, just find her." He didn't owe anyone explanations. Not his men, not the city. But inside, a quiet voice whispered the truth he didn't want to hear. "You're losing control. Amara wasn't running. Not from him, at least. She was chasing something bigger. A lead that could blow open the entire network she'd been investigating for months. Documents. Money transfers. Offshore accounts. All roads led to one man, and one name, Adrian Moretti. But the more she uncovered, the less she believed what the world said about him. There were contradictions, strange gaps, sudden disappearances of evidence, protection given to people who should have been disposable. He wasn't clean, but he wasn't simple either, and somehow she couldn't tell anymore if she wanted to expose him or understand him. She parked her car near the old industrial pier, the same place where she'd first met him face to face, the same place where truth and danger had collided. She didn't see the two men following her. Not until it was too late. Adrian's phone buzzed again, sharp and urgent. Marco's voice came through the line, tense. We found her car, but not her. There were signs of a struggle. Adrian froze. For a moment the world went silent. No noise, no thought, just a slow, burning pulse of fury. Where? The pier. He didn't wait for another word. By the time Marco hung up, Adrian was already gone. The drive was a blur. Headlights, city lights, the hum of the engine under his hands. Every second stretched, and every second she wasn't safe felt like a cut deeper than the last. When he arrived, the air reeked of salt and gasoline. Two of his men were already there, unconscious, bleeding. And in the shadows, a figure moved. He didn't hesitate. One shot, then silence, then her voice. Adrian? She stepped out from behind a rusted crate, shaking, bruised, but alive. For the first time in years, his breath caught. He holstered his gun, eyes scanning her face. You shouldn't have been here, he said, voice rough. She met his gaze, still defiant, even now. I could say the same. He stepped closer, his hand brushing her jaw, checking for blood, for proof she was real. The contact was fleeting, electric, the kind of touch that said everything he couldn't. You have no idea what you've just cost me, he whispered. She tilted her chin, whispering back, Then stop protecting me. He looked at her, truly looked, at the fire in her eyes, the courage, the maddening innocence of someone who still believed truth could win. And for the first time he realized, she didn't need saving, she needed the truth. But in his world, truth wasn't freedom. It was a death sentence. He let his hand drop, stepping back into the shadows. Get in the car, Amara. Adrian, now. The word cracked like thunder, and she obeyed. Not out of fear, but because something in his voice told her. If she didn't, this night would end in blood. As the car pulled away, Adrian stood there under the fading streetlights, smoke curling around him. He'd protected her. Again. But it came with a cost he could already feel in his chest, because every time he saved her, he lost a piece of himself. The ride back was silent. Not the kind of silence that fills a room. The kind that breathes, tight and heavy, between two people who've both said too much and not enough. Amara sat in the back seat, staring out the window. Los Angeles drifted by, neon lights bleeding into rain-soaked streets, the city pulsing like a heart that refused to stop beating. Adrian sat beside her, hands clasped loosely, expression unreadable. To anyone else he looked calm, but beneath that calm was a storm, a kind of anger that wasn't aimed at her, but at himself. He'd built his empire by staying detached. Every decision made in logic, never emotion. And now, one woman, one reckless, impossible woman, was breaking that rule without even trying. When they reached his penthouse, she stepped out before he could open the door. He followed her wordlessly, his men keeping their distance. Inside, the elevator ride stretched like an eternity. The hum of the city below felt far away, muffled by the tension hanging between them. Finally, she turned to him. You followed me. He didn't deny it. You were being hunted. You lied to me, she said, her voice steady but edged. You said it was nothing. He exhaled through his nose. If I'd told you the truth, you wouldn't have stopped digging. You're right, she shot back. But at least I'd have known what I was walking into. Her words hit him harder than any bullet ever could. Because she wasn't wrong. He'd taken her choice away, the same way the world had taken his, long ago. He looked at her. Really looked. at the bruise forming on her jaw, at the small cut on her hand, at the defiance that refused to die in her eyes. "Who sent them?" she asked quietly. He didn't answer. He couldn't. Because saying the name out loud would make it real, and that was something he wasn't ready for. Instead, he poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed one to her. She didn't take it. "I'm not here for your drinks or your protection, Adrian," she said. "I'm here for the truth." He stared at her for a long moment, then set his glass down. "You think truth will save you?" he asked softly. "It won't. Truth doesn't save people, Amara. It buries them." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Then why do you keep saving me?" He froze. The question hung in the air. Fragile. Dangerous. Too close to the edge. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, rougher. "Because I can't watch someone like you get destroyed by a city I built." For a second, the room felt smaller, as if the walls themselves knew something was about to break. Amara's heartbeat was loud in her ears. She took a slow step toward him. "You think I'm afraid of you," she said. "I'm not." He smiled faintly, but it wasn't amusement. It was pain. "You should be." She shook her head. "No, you want me to be afraid because it's easier that way. But I see you, Adrian. The part you try to hide behind all this power." He took a step forward, too close now. His scent, his presence, his voice. All of it surrounded her. "And what exactly do you think you see?" he asked. Her answer was barely a whisper. "The man you could have been." For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then something shifted. In him, in her, in the space between them. The air crackled with something too real to name. He should have walked away, but he didn't. Instead, he reached out, not to touch her, not yet, but to stop himself from doing exactly that. "Careful, Amara," he said, voice low. "You're standing too close to the edge." She looked up at him, eyes fierce. Maybe that's where the truth lives. And in that moment, they both knew whatever line had kept them apart was gone. All that was left was the fall. There's a moment before every fall. A breath, a heartbeat. A single second where you could still turn back. Adrian knew that moment well. He'd lived his entire life stopping right there, never letting anyone pull him over the edge, until now. After she said those words, maybe that's where the truth lives. Something shifted between them. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, like the city holding its breath before the rain. She turned away first, trying to build a wall with silence. But the problem with silence is that it gives your thoughts too much room to move. Amara stood near the glass wall of his penthouse, looking out at Los Angeles, a skyline full of lies and ghosts. "You built this empire on fear," she said softly, "but it doesn't scare me." He didn't answer right away. He just watched her, the curve of her shoulders, the way her voice trembled even when she tried to sound strong. "You should be scared," he said finally. "Because everything I touch eventually breaks." She turned to face him, eyes steady. "Then maybe it's time something touched you back." Her words hit deeper than she knew. Because no one had ever dared talk to him like that. Not his men, not his enemies, not even the people who claimed to love him once. And for the first time in years, Adrian felt something he couldn't control. He crossed the room slowly, every step deliberate. When he stopped in front of her, the city lights reflected in his eyes, gold, dangerous, almost human. "Why do you keep pushing?" he asked quietly. "Because I see the man behind the monster," she whispered. "And maybe he's worth saving." He almost laughed, almost. But instead, he reached up and brushed a strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering just long enough to feel her pulse. It was fast. Too fast. "You shouldn't try to save a man who doesn't want to be saved," he said. And yet, even as he spoke, his voice betrayed him. Softer, unsteady. "Then tell me to leave," she said. "Tell me you don't want me here." He opened his mouth, but no words came. Because it wasn't true. Because somewhere between loyalty and loneliness, he'd started to need her. She stepped closer. Her scent, faint, familiar, hit him like a memory he'd tried too hard to forget. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You can't protect me from the truth, Adrian. You can only protect me from yourself." And that was when it broke. The last thread of restraint he'd been holding. He moved, sudden, desperate, catching her wrist before she could walk away. Not rough, not cruel, just real. His thumb brushed against her skin, and she looked up at him, wide-eyed. The city outside blurred, as if even the lights didn't want to watch what came next. "I've spent years keeping people out," he said, "because every time I let someone in, they pay the price. Then let me decide what I'm willing to pay," she replied. He searched her eyes, for fear, for hesitation, but found none. Just that same stubborn fire that had drawn him in from the start. He released her wrist slowly, but the distance between them didn't return, because it wasn't physical anymore. It was something deeper, something dangerous. When he finally spoke again, his voice was low, almost broken. "You don't understand, Amara. Once I fall, I don't know if I can stop." She smiled faintly, tears glinting in her eyes. "Then fall. Maybe it's time you did." He should have stepped back. Instead, he leaned in, just close enough to feel her breath, close enough for the world to disappear for a heartbeat. Outside, thunder rolled over Los Angeles. Inside, two people stood on the edge of something neither could control. The city still belonged to Adrian Moretti. But that night, his heart didn't. There's a saying in Los Angeles: storms don't just happen, they build. You feel them first, in the silence before the thunder. That's what this was. The silence before everything went wrong. The night after Amara's words. "Then fall. Maybe it's time you did." Adrian didn't sleep. He sat by the window of his penthouse, city lights flickering below him, the hum of the streets whispering secrets he'd tried to forget. For years, he'd built his world on power, fear, control, precision, and now all of that was slipping. Because of her. He could still feel the warmth of her skin on his fingertips, the look in her eyes that made him forget who he was, or maybe remember who he used to be. By morning, he tried to bury it. He returned to the routine, meetings, deals, threats delivered in silence. But something had changed. His men noticed it. The ones who used to fear his calm now whispered about his distraction. And distraction was dangerous. Rico, his second in command, stepped into the office, closing the door quietly. "You sure you're okay, boss?" Adrian didn't look up from his papers. "Why wouldn't I be?" Rico hesitated. "Because our shipments were hit again." "That's the third this week!" Adrian's jaw tightened. "By who?" Rico hesitated, eyes dark. "Someone who knows our roots. Someone close." The words sank deep, colder than any threat. Adrian leaned back, exhaling slow. "Find out who," quietly. Rico nodded, but before leaving he said what no one else dared to. "Whoever she is, boss. Be careful. People are starting to talk." Adrian's silence was the only answer he gave. Later that night, Amara showed up at his door. Her hair was damp from the rain, her expression unreadable. "You didn't answer my calls," she said softly. "I was busy," he replied. She smiled faintly. "You're always busy," he looked at her. And just like that, all the walls he'd rebuilt in the last 12 hours cracked again. "Come in," he said. The storm outside hit harder. Rain streaked the glass as thunder rolled across the city. Inside, the air was thick with everything they weren't saying. Amara set her bag down. "I saw the news," she said. "The docs. That was you, wasn't it?" He didn't confirm it. He didn't need to. "You shouldn't be here," he told her. "Then why did you let me in?" Because he couldn't help it. Because no matter how much he tried, she was the one thing that made the darkness in him feel like something worth fighting. "People are watching," he said. "You don't understand how dangerous this is." "I understand," she said quietly. "I just don't care." That broke him a little, the way she said it like a truth she was ready to die for. He stepped closer. "You think you're safe with me?" "I think I'm safer than I've ever been," she replied. He wanted to believe her. God, he did. But deep down, he knew the truth. The moment she stepped into his world, she became a target. And as if the city wanted to prove him right, his phone buzzed. One message, one sentence. "We know about her." The blood drained from his face. He didn't show her the message, just turned toward the window, staring into the storm. Amara stepped closer, her voice trembling. "Adrian, what is it?" He didn't answer, because if he did, she'd know too much, and there'd be no turning back. The thunder outside roared again, shaking the glass. He whispered almost to himself, The storm's here. Amara frowned. What storm? He turned to her, eyes dark, voice low. The one I can't protect you from. And in that single moment, everything he feared began. By the next morning, Los Angeles wasn't whispering anymore. It was roaring. Rumors spread like wildfire, the kind that couldn't be put out once it started. Every bar, every back room, every dirty deal in the city carried one name. Amara, the woman seen with Adrian Moretti, the woman who made the untouchable man look human. And in a city built on fear, humanity was weakness. Adrian's men tried to keep control. They buried names, paid off police, erased traces. But the streets were watching, and the streets always talk. By noon, Adrian was standing in his office, looking out at the skyline. The storm had passed, but the air still felt heavy, charged. Rico entered, eyes sharp, voice tense. "We found out who's behind the hits," he said. Adrian didn't turn. "Who?" Marcelli. The name froze the room. Marcelli, a rival boss, one Adrian had buried years ago. Or so he thought. Rico continued, "He's back. And he's not after the business. He's after you." Adrian finally turned, face unreadable. "No, he's after her, because that was the truth. The message last night wasn't about power or revenge. It was a warning. They knew where to hurt him now. That afternoon, he sent Amara away. Or at least he tried to. You can't stay here," he said, voice tight. "Pack a bag," she crossed her arms. "And go where?" "Anywhere but here." "No," she said. "I'm not running." He stepped closer, frustration burning under his calm. "This isn't a choice, Amara." She met his gaze without flinching. "It stopped being your choice when you brought me into this." Her words hit hard. Because she was right. He had brought her in, not through force, but through the kind of connection he couldn't undo. He tried again. Softer. "If you stay, they'll use you to destroy me." "Then let them try," she whispered. "I'm done being afraid of shadows." He looked at her, really looked. And for the first time, he realized how far she'd come. The girl who once flinched at the sound of gunfire now stood against an empire, and he hated himself for loving her for it. By nightfall, Rico came back with worse news. "The Marcelli crew hit 2 of our safe houses. They left a message this time." He handed Adrian a photo, a single bullet casing, and a note. "You can't protect what you love." Adrian's jaw clenched. The veins in his hands stood out as he gripped the paper. "Double the guards," he said. "Lock down every route in and out of the city." Rico hesitated. "Boss, that means war." Adrian's voice dropped, calm and final. "Then war it is." Later that night, Amara found him in his office again, the city lights painting him in gold and shadow. He looked tired, not physically, but somewhere deeper. "You think fighting them will fix this?" she asked softly. He didn't look up. "Fighting is all I know." She walked closer, her voice trembling. "You don't have to be that man anymore." His eyes lifted to hers, and for a moment, the weight of years, of blood, fear, and loneliness, cracked open. "I already am," he said. She reached out, touching his face gently. For a moment he let her. He let himself feel something real. Then the sound shattered it. A gunshot from the street below. Then another. The building alarms blared. Rika's voice echoed from the hallway. "They found us." Adrian grabbed her hand. "Stay behind me." The world outside was chaos. Flashing lights, gunfire in the distance, the sound of engines roaring. Amara's heart raced. But even in the middle of it, one thought anchored her. The way his hand refused to let go of hers. The city had turned against them. But in that moment, standing side by side in the storm they created, they only had each other. And that terrified Adrian Moretti more than any enemy ever could. Loyalty. It's the currency of the streets. More valuable than money, more dangerous than love. Adrian Moretti built his empire on it. Men who'd take a bullet before breaking their word, blood oaths signed in silence, trust earned through fear. But tonight, loyalty felt fragile. It felt like something that could shatter with one wrong whisper. The attack at the penthouse left his men shaken. 2 cars burned in the alley below. Windows cracked, and for the first time, Adrian realized. Someone inside had talked. He sat at his desk, bruised knuckles pressed against his chin, listening as Rico gave the report. "We lost 3 men," Rico said quietly, "and they knew exactly where to hit." Adrian didn't look up. "Inside job," Rico hesitated. "You think it's one of ours?" "I don't think," Adrian said. "I know." He stood walking toward the glass wall, the city glowing beneath him. Beautiful, deceptive, alive. Every light was a secret, every shadow a lie. "Find him," Adrian said. "Find who sold us out," Rico nodded. "And if it's someone close?" Adrian's voice was steady, but his eyes weren't. "Then loyalty has a price." Amara watched from the doorway. She hadn't spoken since the shooting stopped. Her hand still shook, even though she tried to hide it. When he turned toward her, she forced herself to stay calm. "You think one of your own betrayed you?" He nodded once. "Someone's feeding Marcelli information." Her heart sank. "You don't think it's Rico, do you?" Adrian didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence said enough. She stepped closer. "He's your right hand, Adrian. You trust him?" He looked at her, eyes dark, jaw tight. "I trusted everyone once. That's how I learned not to." She didn't argue. She just whispered, "You can't fight a war when you don't know who's standing beside you." He smiled faintly, but it wasn't warmth. It was something colder. "I've been fighting that kind of war my whole life." That night, Rico returned with information, half-truths, phone records, names, and one photo, blurry, but clear enough, a meet-up in an old warehouse at the docks. Someone from Adrian's crew shaking hands with Marcelli's men. Adrian's stomach turned. He recognized the shape, the walk, the betrayal. It wasn't Rico. It was Marco, one of his oldest men, the one who'd sworn loyalty to him in blood. Adrian didn't flinch, didn't speak. He just stared at the photo, his pulse steady, like calm before a kill. "When?" he asked. "Tonight," Rico replied. "He's meeting them again." "Dock 14. Adrian grabbed his coat. "I'll handle it, boss," Rico said quickly. No. Adrian's voice was final. "If loyalty dies tonight, it dies by my hand." Amara followed him to the elevator. "You don't have to do this," she said. He turned to her, the faintest sadness in his eyes. "Yes, I do." "Then let me come with you." He hesitated, the steel in him softening for just a moment. "It's not your world, Amara." She met his gaze, unafraid. "It is now." And that was the problem. She was right. The docks were quiet when they arrived. Fog rolled in from the ocean, and every sound, every creak, every echo felt like a heartbeat. Adrian spotted Marco waiting near a car. He walked straight toward him. No words, no warning. Marco's eyes widened. "Boss, Adrian didn't raise his voice. "Why?" Marco swallowed hard. "They had my family, Adrian. My kids." Adrian closed his eyes for a second. He understood too well what desperation could do. But betrayal was betrayal. And in his world, loyalty was sacred. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You should have come to me." "I couldn't," Marco whispered. "You'd have killed them." Adrian's jaw tightened. And now? The silence said everything. He turned away, the weight of leadership, of guilt, pressing on his shoulders. Behind him, the shot echoed. Rico had pulled the trigger. The man who betrayed them was gone. But the price of loyalty was written in blood once again. When they drove back, Amara didn't speak. Adrian's hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white. Finally, she said, "You didn't want to kill him." He shook his head. "No, but I had to remind them who I am." She looked at him quietly. "And who is that, Adrian?" His answer came slow, heavy. "The man no one's allowed to love. The city never really sleeps. It just hides its sins beneath the glow of streetlights. And for Adrian Moretti, those sins had names, faces, and memories that refused to fade. That night, after the docks, he didn't go home. He drove. Past empty highways, past neighborhoods he once ruled, past ghosts he never buried. Because sometimes the only way to silence the past is to face it head-on, Amara waited for him. Hours passed, but she didn't leave. She sat in his office, wrapped in his jacket, staring at the faint blood on the cuff. A reminder of the life he kept trying to keep away from her. When the door finally opened, the clock read 3:17 a.m. He looked exhausted, not from battle, but from memory. She stood slowly. "You didn't come back. I had to see someone," he said quietly. She studied him. "Someone or something?" He gave a tired smile. "Both." He poured himself a drink but didn't touch it. His eyes stayed on the glass, lost somewhere far away. "When I was 17, he began, "I watched my father die on these streets. Not because he was weak, but because he trusted the wrong man." His voice didn't tremble, but his hands did. Just slightly. "I swore I'd never be like him. Never let anyone close enough to do that to me. So I built walls, brick by brick, deal by deal, until one day, the boy who wanted justice turned into the man everyone feared." Amara didn't interrupt. She just listened, because for the first time he wasn't the boss. He was just a man, finally telling the truth. He looked at her, eyes darker than the city behind him. "I tell myself everything I've done was for control. But some nights, I can still hear him calling my name, asking me if I became the kind of man he'd be proud of." He let out a hollow laugh, and the answer's always no. She walked closer, slow and quiet like she was approaching a wounded animal. "Maybe pride isn't the point," she said softly. "Maybe it's survival." He looked at her, and something in his chest broke. A crack so deep it hurt to breathe. "Survival," he repeated. "You make it sound simple." "It's not," she said. "But it's human." He turned away, pacing toward the window, watching the lights of Los Angeles burn below. "You don't know what it's like to have blood on your hands that never washes off." She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "Then let me try." He faced her again, and for a moment he hated her for it. For wanting to see the part of him he spent years hiding. For refusing to let him disappear behind his armor. "You don't get it, Amara," he said, his voice sharp now. "You don't fix a man like me. You survive him." She didn't flinch. "I'm not here to fix you, Adrian. I'm here to remind you you're still alive." Those words, simple, quiet, cut through everything else. Because no one had said them to him before, not in that way. He reached out, almost without realizing it, his hand brushing hers, his fingers cold, his pulse unsteady. For a moment neither of them moved. The distance between them was gone. She looked up at him. "You can't keep living in a graveyard of your past." He smiled faintly, sad, real. "That's the thing, sweetheart. When you've buried enough people, the graveyard starts to feel like home." Her eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. "Then maybe it's time you left home." Outside, the first light of dawn crept over the city. The kind of pale gold that made even Los Angeles look innocent. Adrian looked at her, really looked. And for the first time, the ghost didn't feel so loud. For the first time in years, he felt something close to peace, and that scared him more than any enemy ever could. They say power doesn't fall overnight. But for Adrian Moretti, it began to crumble in silence, not with gunfire or betrayal in the open, but in whispers, and whispers were deadlier than bullets. Los Angeles still bowed to his name, but something in the streets had shifted. His men were nervous. Calls went unanswered. Eyes that once showed loyalty now flickered with doubt. The city that once feared him was starting to forget why they should. And in the shadows, someone was watching it happen. Marcelli. He'd been Adrian's ally once. Business partner, confidant, the kind of man who smiled while counting the money he'd stab you over. Now, he was waiting for the perfect moment. And that moment came when Adrian's heart got involved. Amara noticed first. Small things. A new car following her home. A stranger who knew her name. A man in a cafe pretending to read but never turning the page. When she told Adrian, his jaw clenched. The kind of silent anger that meant someone was going to bleed. "Who?" he asked. She shook her head. "I don't know. But whoever it is, they're close." He paced, eyes dark. "Marcelli's testing me. He thinks I'm distracted. He thinks you are my weakness. Are you?" She asked quietly. He stopped, looked at her. And for the first time, he didn't have an answer. That night, his penthouse felt colder than usual. The air carried tension. Heavy. Electric. He stood at the window, watching the city lights flicker like fireflies, his reflection split against the glass. "Do you know what power really is, Amara?" he asked softly. She turned toward him, her voice calm but curious. Control? He shook his head. No, power's knowing who'll bleed for you, and who'll make you bleed. He turned, eyes locking with hers. And I think Marcelli's finally figured out which one you are. She didn't look away. Then he's underestimating me. Adrian's lips twitched, half pride, half fear. I'm not sure he is. The next morning he got the call. One of his warehouses, torched. No casualties, but everything inside reduced to ash. No signature. No message, just smoke and silence. The kind of move that said, I'm coming, and you won't see me until I'm already here. Adrian crushed his cigarette against the balcony rail, watching the ashes scatter into the wind. Marcelli wasn't just attacking his business. He was dismantling his reputation, piece by piece, quietly, precisely. And in their world, once fear was gone, respect followed. That evening, Amara found him sitting in the dark. No music, no glass in hand, just him in the shadows. Tell me what you're thinking, she whispered. He looked up slowly. I'm thinking about how easy it is to lose everything when your heart starts beating for someone. Her voice softened. You think I made you weak? He shook his head. No, you made me visible. She stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. Then maybe it's time you stop hiding. He smiled faintly, though his eyes stayed haunted. Marcelli's not coming for me head on. He's too smart. He's setting traps, quiet ones. And the first one is already closed. She frowned. What do you mean? He reached for his phone, pressing play on a voice recording. A familiar voice filled the room. Deep, calm, dangerous. If you want to destroy a man like Moretti, you don't shoot him. You make the people he loves stop trusting him first. Amara froze. Her pulse quickened. Where did you get this? He looked at her, eyes cold, focused. From one of my own men. There was silence. A long, heavy silence that said everything words couldn't. She realized then the real war had already started. Not on the streets, but in the spaces between loyalty and love. Outside, Los Angeles gleamed. Too beautiful for the things that were about to happen. Inside, Adrian Moretti prepared for a kind of fight he'd never faced before. Not for his city. Not for his throne, but for her. And as the night deepened, one truth echoed in his mind. That love and war were never opposites. They were twins born from the same fire. They say betrayal doesn't always come with blood. Sometimes it comes with a choice. And that night, Amara learned what it meant to bleed without a wound. The city was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that means something's about to break. Adrian had been awake for 40 hours, running numbers, tracing phone lines, burning through trust like gasoline. Every lead turned cold. Every name, every favor, every promise he'd once bought with fear. Gone. And Amara? She watched the man who ruled Los Angeles slowly unravel, thread by thread. It started with a phone call. Unknown number, a voice she didn't recognize. Calm, confident, dangerous. You're close to Moretti. That makes you valuable. Meet me tonight. 10 p.m. Santa Rosa Pier. Come alone. Or you'll watch his empire fall before sunrise. She froze, the phone trembling in her hand. The smart thing would have been to tell Adrian. But love doesn't always make you smart. It makes you human. She told herself she could handle it. That she'd meet the man, get answers, come back before Adrian noticed. But deep down, she knew. Every secret kept from him was another knife waiting to turn. At 10 p.m., the pier was deserted. The air smelled of salt and rust, the ocean whispering against the wood like it knew a secret it couldn't tell. A black car waited at the end of the dock, and from it stepped Marcelli. He looked nothing like a villain. No gun, no guards, just a man in a gray suit with the kind of smile that made you question your own instincts. Miss Vale, he greeted smoothly. Or should I say the reason Moretti's slipping? Her pulse spiked. You think I'm afraid of you? He chuckled. No, I think you're afraid of what I can make you do. She said nothing. Marcelli walked closer, hands in his pockets. I don't want to hurt Adrian. I want to own him. And men like him? They only bow for one thing, Slav. That's where you come in. Her eyes narrowed. You think I'd sell him out? He smiled. You already are. Just by standing here. Those words hit harder than a bullet. She took a step back. I'm leaving. But before she could move, he spoke again, softly, almost kindly. Check his phone records. The last person who betrayed him was his own brother. Do you think he'd forgive you if he knew you came here? Her chest tightened. He was setting her up, planting poison in her heart. And she knew it. But lies, when they're sharp enough, still cut deep. When she returned to Adrian's penthouse, he was waiting. Not angry, not loud, just quiet. Too quiet. Where were you? Her breath hitched. I just needed air. He studied her, every blink, every breath. You're lying. Adrian, don't. His voice cracked like thunder. Not you. Not tonight. She felt the weight of the truth pressing against her ribs. He already knew. Somehow he always did. He stepped closer, his eyes dark and unreadable. Marcelli's people were at the pier tonight. You want to tell me why your name came up on their camera feed? Her lips parted, but no words came. He exhaled slowly, pain flashing behind his control. You went to meet him. Tears welled, uninvited. I was trying to protect you, by walking into his trap, his tone cut deep, or by giving him exactly what he wanted. Her voice broke. I didn't tell him anything. He looked away, jaw tight. Doesn't matter. You showed up. That's enough. For a long time, neither spoke. Just the faint hum of the city outside, the sound of a man trying not to break, and a woman realizing she already had. Finally, he whispered, You don't understand. Amara, in my world, intent doesn't matter. Only action does. She stepped closer. Then take action, Adrian. But remember, if you push me away now, you're doing Marcelli's work for him. He stared at her, silent, torn, because she was right, and that made it worse. Later, when she was gone and the room was quiet again, Adrian poured himself a drink he didn't taste. He watched the city through the glass, his reflection split in two. One half the ruthless boss, the other, the man who'd fallen for the only person capable of destroying him. And for the first time, Adrian Moretti realized, betrayal doesn't always come from your enemies. Sometimes it comes from the piece of your heart you trusted most. The city was alive with tension. Los Angeles never felt quieter, and Adrian Moretti could hear it. Every corner, every alley, every street carried the scent of war. Marcelli had crossed the line. Not just with deals, not just with whispers. He had dared to test Adrian's love. And that was a mistake. Adrian moved like a shadow that night. No lights, no hesitation. Just him and the men who had survived years under his command. Every step was calculated. Every word spoken in silence. Amara followed quietly, because she refused to be left behind. She didn't want to be a distraction. She wanted to be his strength. They'll be expecting us, Adrian said, voice low, eyes scanning the street ahead. They'll underestimate you. I've never been underestimated, she said. He smiled faintly, dark, dangerous. And yet, you still survive every storm I throw at you. The warehouse loomed ahead, dark and empty. Broken windows, scattered crates, shadows that moved in the corner of vision. Marcelli had chosen his battlefield. Adrian would choose his justice. They entered silently, weapons concealed. Every step, every breath, a promise. Then the first gunshot rang out, loud, echoing. Marcelli's men were waiting. Adrian reacted instantly. Precision born from years of fear and training. Every movement controlled, every strike deliberate. Amara ducked behind a crate, heart pounding, watching him move. Not as a boss, not as a killer. As a man who would fight anyone, any force, for her. The firefight was brief, but intense. Shots shattered glass. Bullets tore through wood and metal, but Adrian's focus never wavered. He reached Marcelli quickly, the man calm, smug, thinking he had won. Adrian, Marcelli said, you always come to the fight too late. Or too early, I can't tell anymore. You underestimate me, Adrian said, voice low, and I don't forgive underestimation. Their fight was quick, brutal, silent to anyone who didn't understand the stakes. Every strike was a calculation. Every punch carried years of anger, betrayal, and fear. Finally, Adrian pinned Marcelli, eyes dark, rage tempered by control. This city, this empire, is mine, he whispered. But you will never touch her again. Marcelli smiled faintly. You think she'll stay? After everything. Adrian's jaw tightened. She already has. And that's enough. Outside, Amara emerged from cover. Her hands trembled, but she didn't move away. You're alive, she said softly. I told you, Adrian said, voice rough. I fight for her. Not for the Empire. Not for power. For her. She stepped closer, and for the first time, the city, the war, the blood around them, none of it mattered. Then let me stand with you, she whispered. He looked at her, torn between letting her in and keeping her safe. I can't promise you safety, he said. I don't need safety, she replied. I need you. That was all he needed. All of it. By the time the police sirens cut through the night, the warehouse was empty, except for Adrian, Amara, and Marcelli, unconscious at his feet. Adrian looked at her, hands still shaking from adrenaline. You could have been killed, he said, voice low, almost afraid of the answer. I could have, she said, but I didn't, and neither did you. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close, feeling the heat of life and survival against him. The city outside was loud, alive, dangerous. But inside that moment, in the shadow of war and blood, they had something the streets could never touch. Each other. The warehouse was quiet now. Only the distant hum of the city reminded them that Los Angeles never truly slept, and neither did danger. Adrian stood near the broken crates, the weight of the night pressing against his shoulders. Every shot fired, every life threatened, every decision he had made, it all came back in echoes. But for the first time in years, the adrenaline didn't feel like power. It felt like exhaustion and longing. Amara approached slowly, her steps careful, almost afraid he might snap. Not from rage, but from the vulnerability she didn't often see. You're alive, she whispered, eyes searching his face. I always am, he said, though the truth lingered in the shadows behind his eyes. He wasn't just alive. He was changed, because survival wasn't enough anymore. They walked to the car together side by side, but neither spoke. The streets were empty, slick with rain from the earlier storm, reflecting the neon that painted the city in gold and red. Every light seemed to mock them, beauty in a city built on fear. You could have been killed tonight, Adrian finally said, voice low, almost trembling. I know, she replied softly. But so could you, and we survived, didn't we? He studied her, and for a long moment he didn't answer, because survival came at a cost he wasn't sure he could pay, not with his empire, not with his enemies, not even with his heart. I've spent my life building walls, he said finally, voice rough. Walls to keep everyone out, to keep myself safe. And somehow, you walked right through them. Amara's gaze softened. I didn't walk through, Adrian. You let me in, or maybe I found the cracks. He swallowed, tension coiling in his chest. Cracks that could get you killed. Then let me risk it, she said. Her voice was steady, unwavering, and it struck him harder than any bullet ever could, because if loving you is dangerous, I'll take it. They reached his penthouse, the city sprawling beneath them like a living, breathing thing. Adrian poured them both a drink, but neither touched it. The silence was heavy, intimate, a pause between the chaos of life and the chaos of the heart. You know, she said quietly. After tonight, I'm not sure where love ends and war begins. He looked at her, eyes dark, serious. Neither am I. Her hand reached for his, not pressing, not demanding, and just there. He felt her warmth, and for a moment, the world outside disappeared. The guns, the enemies, the empire, the blood, it all faded into nothing but her heartbeat. You're scared, she said softly, reading him like a book he thought was closed forever. I am, he admitted, voice low, because loving someone in my world, it doesn't just put me at risk, it puts you at risk, and I can't bear the thought of losing you. I'm not afraid, she said. I choose this. I choose you, every time. Her words didn't fix the world. They didn't erase the threats or the enemies lining the streets. But they shifted something in him. A crack in the armor. A spark in the darkness. Adrian pulled her close, forehead to forehead, and whispered, Then I'll fight. Not for my empire, not for control, not for fear, but for us. And in that moment, the lines blurred. Love and war weren't opposites anymore. They were one and the same. The city waited outside, dangerous and unpredictable. But inside, in that quiet moment, Adrian Moretti and Amara discovered something even the streets could never take from them, the truth of their hearts. The city had calmed, but Adrian knew better. Los Angeles never truly sleeps. It waits, watches, plots. And tonight, it whispered danger again. Louder, closer, more personal than ever before. He was in his office when Rico burst in, eyes wide with urgency. "Boss, it's happening again." Adrian didn't move, didn't blink. "Who?" Rico hesitated. "One of our own, and Marcelli's men. They're attacking the docks tonight." Adrian's chest tightened. "How many?" "Too many." He didn't speak. He grabbed his coat, his gun, and his focus. Every sense sharpened, every heartbeat measured. Amara appeared beside him, hand slipping into his naturally, not as a follower, but as his equal in this fight. "You shouldn't come," he said quietly. "I told you," she replied. "I'm not leaving, not now." "Not ever." He looked at her, the storm outside reflected in his dark eyes. "You could die. And you could die too," she said softly. "But we face it together." The docks were chaos incarnate. Smoke, fire, shadows moving like predators in the dark. Adrian's men engaged, but even they were being picked off by hidden snipers. It was a trap, precise, calculated. Someone on the inside had given Marcelli everything he needed. Adrian's eyes scanned, fast and precise. Then he saw it. Marco, alive, back from the dead, acting like loyalty never mattered. And worse, directing Marcelli's men with the same calm arrogance that had once been his. The betrayal hit like a bullet to the chest. "Marco," Adrian growled, voice low and dangerous. Marco didn't flinch. "You should have killed me before, boss. Now you'll regret it." Amara moved closer, pulling Adrian slightly back. "They're too many," she whispered. He shook his head. "No, not for us." And with that, the fight became personal. Every move Adrian made was calculated. Every shot was precise. Every step forward cut through not just the enemy, but the betrayal. Amara fought beside him, instinct blending with courage. She wasn't just surviving. She was defending the man she loved, the man whose empire and heart were being torn apart simultaneously. Marcelli watched from the shadows, smirking. "You think love will save you?" he called. Adrian didn't answer with words. He moved faster, harder, using every tactic he'd learned from years of surviving a world built on fear and blood. Marco tried to flank him. Adrian turned, and in one swift motion, he disarmed his old friend. "Loyalty," Adrian said, voice icy, "has a price. You forgot yours." The fight reached its peak in the center of the docks. Gunfire echoed against metal. Water shimmered red in the dim lights, and the air was thick with tension. Adrian cornered Marcelli finally. "You've made your moves," he said, voice low, dangerous. "And now, you're done." Amara stepped close, eyes fierce. "No more traps. No more games." Marcelli smirked once, then saw the storm in both their eyes. For the first time he hesitated, and hesitation in Adrian's world was fatal. One shot, precise, silent. Marcelli went down. Marco surrendered soon after. The threat within was over, for now. When the smoke cleared, Adrian and Amara stood together. Bruised, bloodied, but unbroken. He looked at her, chest heaving, sweat and grime covering him, and realized the truth. This was the world he lived in. Violence, betrayal, darkness, and yet, love had survived it. She reached up, brushing the blood from his cheek. "You're alive," she whispered. "Yes," he replied, voice low, reverent. "And you're still here." For a moment, the city, the war, the blood, none of it mattered. Only the truth they had found amidst the chaos. They would fight for each other. Through every enemy, every trap, every ghost of the past, the enemy within had struck, but together they had struck back harder. The city sprawled beneath them, Los Angeles alive with lights, sirens, and secrets. But in Adrian Moretti's penthouse, all of that felt distant, almost meaningless. Tonight, the world had narrowed to one truth. the woman standing before him. Amara. He had spent his life building an empire, walls of fear, streets paved with silence, power measured in whispers and gunfire. He had ruled Los Angeles with precision, ruthlessness, and control. But none of it mattered if she wasn't in his life. Marcelli was gone. Marco subdued, the traps dismantled, the empire intact, at least for now. Yet Adrian felt something he hadn't in years. A question that wasn't about business, blood, or dominance. It was about heart. He looked at her, chest tight, mind racing, and whispered, "I've spent my life thinking the city was mine. That control was the only thing keeping me alive. But I was wrong." Amara tilted her head, eyes searching his. "Wrong about what?" "That my empire mattered more than you." Her lips curved faintly, almost a smile. "It didn't have to. You choose what matters, Adrian. Always." He took her hand, holding it as if he might never let go. "I've ruled streets, men, deals, but I've never ruled my heart. And for the first time, I realize I can't, because it belongs to you." She stepped closer. "Then what does that mean for us?" He let out a slow breath. It wasn't easy. Giving up control, even partially, went against every instinct. But he had fought for her, survived wars for her. And now the choice was simple. It means you come first. It means love rules the empire, not fear. It means I don't just want to protect you. I want to live for you. Every day. Tears glistened in her eyes, but she smiled, stepping into his arms. "You finally learned, boss," she whispered. "The city doesn't own you. You own your heart." He pressed his forehead to hers, feeling her warmth, her life, her presence. A reminder that even kings need something worth fighting for beyond power. That night, Adrian made a decision. Not just for the empire, not just for vengeance or loyalty, but for love. He called his men, gave new orders, restructuring, rebuilding, fortifying. But he told them one thing clearly. No one threatens this city again, and no one will touch the woman I love. Outside, Los Angeles hummed and pulsed, unaware of the quiet revolution happening inside a penthouse high above. The streets might fear him, respect him, even hate him, but he had found something far more valuable: balance. And that balance was her. Later, Adrian and Amara stood on the balcony, city lights reflecting in their eyes. He pulled her close, holding her like the world could fall apart and it wouldn't matter. "You ever regret following me into this?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "No, I followed my heart." He smiled, dark, dangerous, and finally at peace. "So did I." The city might still whisper his name, still fear the mafia boss who owned Los Angeles. But above it all, in this moment, the man they feared the most had finally surrendered to something stronger than power. Stronger than blood, stronger than the empire. Love. And for Adrian Moretti, that was enough. Love, power, betrayal, and the choices that define us. Adrian Moretti's story has come to an end. For now, but every empire has its secrets. Every heart has its next chapter. If you've felt the pulse of the city, the weight of loyalty, and the fire of forbidden love, don't let this story end here. Subscribe now, and step into worlds where danger and desire collide, where every heartbeat, every whisper, every shadow tells a story you won't forget. Join us, and let the next chapter find you.